Chapter 1. The Wallet That Didn't Buy Her. They said girls like her stayed quiet, swallowed their pain, and kept moving. She didn't. Imani spotted the wallet by the gas pumps off Ralph David Abernathy, caught in the glare like a fish pulled from dark water. Thick leather, clean stitching. Money sleeping inside it like it had nothing to worry about. Her stomach pinched hard, but her hands stayed steady. She opened it under the humming light. Crisp bills stacked neat, 2 heavy cards that could open any door, and an ID, Darius Cole, Cole Dynamics. That name meant jets, lawyers, and a view from any floor. Hunger whispered the easy plan. Nobody saw you. Take a little. Eat tonight. Find a room for a week. But another voice rose up from an older place, a father's kind of voice that didn't bend. What ain't yours will never bless you. She closed the wallet and walked, not fast, not slow, just honest. At the tower, security looked her over like she brought trouble in her pockets. She stood there in worn sneakers and a clean face, calm as a Wednesday. Someone dropped this, she said. I think it belongs upstairs. One guard snorted, the other shrugged. Tyrone, the intern with sharp eyes and a borrowed tie, drifted close and heard the shape of her story. He went to find Renee. The elevator ride carried her higher than she'd been in months. The glass office framed Darius like a painting. Black suit, colder stare, a man who signed futures with a pen that never ran dry. He opened the wallet, checked the cards, then found a small hidden photo. A boy and a man, summer bright. His shoulders dropped a fraction, almost human. He pushed a stack of bills toward her like he was swatting a fly. Take it, he said. Imani shook her head. No, sir. I didn't return it for money. Silence tightened the room. The AC clicked. He frowned as if the sun disrespected him. Everybody wants something, he muttered. A thank you would be fine, she answered, steady. Not sharp, not soft, just true. That line cut through his armor in a quiet way. He slid open a drawer, pulled out a business card with his name pressed in silver, and held it like a treaty. If you need anything, he said, the words tasting new. She took the card, not the cash. She nodded once, then left the office the same way she came, on her own feet. Outside, evening leaned heavy on the city. Buses sighed, tires hissed on wet asphalt. She stood under the overhang, looked at the card again, and tucked it into her pocket like a seed. The money she left behind would have fed her tonight. The thank you she took with her fed something bigger. He watched her on the lobby feed, a small figure in a blue hoodie, and felt a tug he didn't like to feel. Darius lived in numbers and deadlines. People brought him problems dressed as requests, and he solved them with wire transfers and term sheets. This one refused a shortcut, asked for respect, and walked away. It shook something he kept locked. Imani headed back toward the bus stop, past the chicken spot and the corner where the streetlight always lied. She counted coins in her mind and came up short. The city could be cruel like that, smiling with one side of its mouth while it picked your pockets with the other. Still, she felt taller somehow, like she hadn't lost a thing by doing right. Pride didn't fill a plate, but it kept her warm in a way a stolen dollar never could. At the bridge, the concrete kept its cool even after a hot day. She settled in her corner, laid her head on a rolled sweater, and thought about the way he looked at that hidden photo. Grief recognized grief. Power recognized honesty. Maybe that's why the air in that office felt so thin, 2 hard truths meeting in a place built for lies. Sleep came slow. thoughts stacked up like bills on a kitchen table. She remembered textbooks, lecture halls, the hum of a calculator, and professors who said she had a head for numbers. Life had pushed her out of that room, but numbers didn't forget people who loved them. She told herself the same sentence she told herself every night. Tomorrow will listen if I talk to it right. Somewhere across town, in a house with windows taller than most doors, Darius poured a drink and stared at the little photograph again. He remembered a hand on his shoulder teaching him to stand up straight. He remembered the day that hand was gone. Money made noise, but loss had its own silence. A stranger had walked in and spoke to the man under his title. That didn't happen much. He didn't like it. He didn't hate it either. Morning would come quick, as it always did. The city would spin. Doors would open for some and close for others. And somewhere in the space between, a girl who refused easy money would make a decision that would tilt 2 lives, maybe more. In the old stories, a traveler found a shining thing on the road and had to choose between hunger and honor. Folks who chose honor were never late to their blessing. That was the kind of math no spreadsheet could hold. When the first bus groaned past, Imani sat up, rubbed her hands, and reached for the card again. The silver letters caught the early light. She didn't plan to beg. She planned to work. The difference between those two had carried her this far. It would carry her 1 floor higher, then another, until the numbers lined up and her name fit on a badge she could be proud of. Back in the tower, before the building filled with voices and coffee breath, a man in a black suit stood alone and looked at the city like it owed him nothing and everything at once. He didn't know it yet, but that wallet he almost lost had returned with interest he couldn't measure, not in dollars anyway. Chapter 2, Mop, Bucket, and a Whole Lot of Eyes. She came back the next morning before the sun got loud, washed face, hair tied, cheap sneakers scrubbed like they had a second chance too. She didn't ask for favors. She asked for work. Renee checked the schedule, called HR, and slid a paper across the desk. Orientation lasted 10 minutes and 2 signatures. By 6:30, Imani stood in a faded blue uniform with a plastic badge that said janitorial services. A badge was just plastic, sure, but it felt like a door that finally remembered how to open. The locker room ran on opinions. Women laced shoes and laced words. Somebody whispered, "Who she know?" Another said, "Girl like that don't just appear." Imani tied her scarf tighter, smiled small, and kept moving. The mop handle felt like a staff a traveler leans on. The bucket rolled like a faithful dog. Water swirled, soap bloomed. If life was dusty, this was one thing she could make clean. She learned the building like a song. Elevators had moods. 3rd floor copier lied every Wednesday. Corner office plants drank more than folks did. She hit baseboards folks forgot and vents nobody thanked. She wiped fingerprints off glass like she was erasing yesterday's mistakes. When the lobby coffee machine spit sugar on the counter, she caught it with a towel before it turned sticky. A young receptionist raised a brow. "You fast," Imani shrugged. "Mess moves quick. I move quicker." By 9, the rumors had speed. A manager accidentally dropped a cup just to see if she'd flinch. She didn't. She set the cup upright, apologized to the floor like it had feelings, and kept on. There was no speech in her work, only steady hands and the kind of care folks notice but can't explain. Pride lived quiet in her posture. Not the loud kind, the rooted kind. Miss Bernice watched from the supply closet doorway, arms folded, lips tight, eyes soft. After the second hour, she came over with a brown paper bag that smelled like mercy. "You eat?" she asked. Imani shook her head. Miss Bernice pressed the bag into her palms. "Chicken biscuit. Don't argue. I'm old enough to be your auntie twice." Imani tried to hand it back. "I'm good. And I'm stubborn," Bernice said, "and sit." They split the biscuit like a communion nobody announced. "You work like you mean it," Bernice added. "Keep that. Folks forget floors carry secrets. Floors hear how people treat people." Imani nodded, chewing slow, letting the warmth find its way. Upstairs, Darius scanned camera feeds he usually ignored. He told himself it was security. Truth was, he studied the quiet way she moved. She didn't hover near important doors. She didn't beg important faces. She greeted the night shift guard by name and handed him a fresh water cup like it was no big deal. That kind of thing ate at him in a way he couldn't price. Money bought help. It didn't buy that. By lunch, the canteen buzzed. Talking, laughing, phones out, forks tapping trays. Then the air dipped. Darius walked in without announcing himself. Back straightened. Voices fell. Even the microwaves got shy. Only Imani kept moving like the weather hadn't changed. She held a door with her hip so a janitor could pass. She slid a water toward an older guard whose hands always shook around noon. "Here you go." The guard smiled. "Appreciate you, sister." Darius noticed the small choreography, service without kneeling, dignity without noise. He didn't say a word. He took his coffee black and left the room colder than he found it. Conversation started again like a choir catching the note. Tyrone showed up by the vending machines with a pack of napkins and a grin he tried to hide. "That mop got a motor?" she smirked. "Just 2 hands and rent due." He leaned on the cart, lowered his voice. "If anybody gives you weird vibes, you tell me or Ms. Renee. Folks test new people. We don't let them break good ones." She tucked that sentence away like spare change. Noted. Afternoon brought small storms. A spill in the north hallway tried to run under the baseboards. She guided it back, patient like a teacher. A light flickered over the HR desk. She called maintenance before it became someone's headache. In the lobby, a little earring glittered under a chair. She picked it up and set it on the counter with a yellow sticky note. Found at 12:42. The receptionist blinked. "You tracked the time?" "Helps folks trust the story," Imani said. Simple lines, steady voice. Bernice trained her on the machines like a mother teaching recipes. 2 caps of this, half cap of that. People go heavy on soap when they scared of dirt. Don't do that. Too much soap makes stains hold on. There was a sermon hiding in that sentence, and both women heard it. Imani filed it under things that sound like life. By 3, the building felt different, not loud different, just easier by half an inch. People said thank you a little sooner. Doors swung open for folks they used to let struggle. The place breathed like someone cracked a window only kindness could open. Even the floors gleamed with that after-rain shine. She didn't take credit. She just kept the rhythm, rinse, ring, wipe, smile, nod, move. Near the end of shift, a junior exec in bright shoes cut the corner too hard and clipped her bucket. Water sloshed. "My bad," he said, eyes already on his phone. "I got it," she replied, already catching the wave with the towel. He walked on. Bernice watched from down the hall, shook her head and called out, "Baby, watch your feet, wet floors humble the proud." The exec laughed like it wasn't about him. Imani bit back a smile. Some folks heard wisdom only after they slipped. When the clock nudged 4, she wiped her cart handle clean, lined up bottles by size, and checked the schedule for the next day. No fanfare, no speech. On her way out, she held the lobby door for a woman wrestling a stroller, then stepped into late-day sunshine that made the whole street look freshly washed. The city still had sharp edges, but her heart felt sanded down a little. A good day didn't fix a hard life. It just proved hard lives still held good days. Up in his office, Darius stood by the glass and watched the sidewalk like it could answer questions. He didn't trust feelings, but something about the way a mop and a bucket in the right hands could rewrite a room, that stayed with him. Old folks said water remembers. Maybe floors did too. Maybe people did if you gave them a reason. The building settled into evening with a quieter kind of pride. The work wasn't fancy, it was faithful, and faithful work, even when nobody clapped, always planted seeds. Chapter 3, Numbers don't lie, but people do. She didn't go hunting for secrets, they came looking for her. The top floor rotation landed on her schedule like a surprise knock. New carpet, quiet halls, the kind of silence that costs money. Imani rolled her cart in slow, set the caution sign like a small yellow flag of peace, and got to work. Windows first, then the desks, then the corners nobody bragged about. She moved like she always did, present, careful, breathing steady. In the CFO suite, a folder sat half open, just careless enough to be loud. She wasn't nosy, she was trained. Still, numbers had been her old language, and the first line on the cover hummed in that tongue, Q3 Internal Review. It wasn't the title that grabbed her, it was the math behind it. She dusted with one hand and read with the other, not turning pages, just scanning what the folder already showed. Vendor names doubled up with tiny spelling differences. Consulting fees that grew overnight like weeds after rain. Timestamps stamped long after folks went home. The kind of patterns you could miss if you wanted to. She didn't want to. A shadow moved in the glass behind her. Gerald Banks walked in with that polished smile, the one that told on itself. Navy suit, watch bright enough to blind a thought. "Appreciate you keeping this place spotless," he said, voice warm like microwaved butter. "Executive materials are sensitive. Best not lean too close." He didn't say please. His eyes did the pushing. Imani lowered the cloth, met his smile with a smaller one. "I only touch dust," she said. He chuckled like she told a joke and drifted away. But that smile never reached his eyes. On the elevator down, her gut talked louder than the music. She held the rail and counted breaths. This wasn't her lane, true, but back home, elders used to say, if you see smoke and pretend it's fog, don't be shocked when the house is gone. She wiped the thought clean and kept moving. Mop, rinse, ring, breathe. Tyrone found her by the service elevator, pretending to fight a stack of boxes. "You good?" he asked, voice casual, eyes not. She nodded, then kept nodding until it felt like a lie. "What's on your mind?" he said. Imani glanced around. No one close. "Just saw some numbers upstairs," she said softly. They felt crooked. Tyrone straightened up like the boxes got lighter. Crooked how? She kept it simple. Duplicate vendors, late-night edits, fees that ran like they had legs. He looked at the floor, then at her cart. "We got logs," he said low. "I ain't saying go playing detective. I'm saying facts leave footprints. I can check where folks walked." They took the long way to the break room. Renee sat by the window, phone in her palm, but brain somewhere else. She listened with her whole face, asked no wild questions, just the ones that matter. You didn't touch anything? No, ma'am. You sure what you saw? I know the feel of clean math, Imani said. Renee nodded once. Let me pull invoices against vendor IDs. Tyrone, grab last month's access records quietly. We do this wrong, we make a mess. We do it right, we make the truth look back at itself. The rest of the afternoon wore a new kind of air. People laughed, keyboards clicked, but under it ran a thin string, tight and humming. Imani kept working, eyes on baseboards, mind on lines of numbers that hadn't asked to be born crooked. She remembered Miss Bernice's soap rule. Too much just grinds dirt in deeper. Same with panic, same with guessing. Keep it measured, keep it clean. A little after 3, she passed an empty corridor where the lights always buzzed. Her cart rattled over the threshold. Something in her pocket felt heavier than it should, but she didn't think on it. Not yet. In the reflection of a picture frame, a shape moved and kept moving. The building was full of shapes, most meant nothing. She clocked the detail anyway, because details were how she stayed alive. Renee texted later. Cross-check showed odd patterns, nothing you could shout about yet, but enough to frown. Tyrone sent a single line. Logs show edits after midnight from CFO suite. Access trail looks borrowed. Borrowed meant somebody wore somebody else's keys for a walk. That wasn't just messy, that was bold. Before the shift ended, Miss Bernice handed Imani a fresh pair of gloves like a blessing. You keeping steady? She asked. Trying, Imani said. Bernice leaned close. Old folks told me this. When water runs muddy, don't jump in to prove you brave. Let it settle, then you'll see the bottom. Imani tucked that little sermon into her chest pocket where she kept useful things. She wheeled her cart toward the elevator, head down, thoughts up. The hallway camera blinked its red light like it understood secrets. Behind her, soft footsteps approached, then stopped. A shadow paused in the glass and became a hand manicured neat, reaching for the side pocket of her cart. The hand slid something small and dark between the rags and the spray bottle. The watch caught the light and threw it back like a dare. The footsteps faded before she turned. Imani felt the shift before she found the cause. She checked the cart pocket, fingers brushing plastic. A flash drive, cold, simple, waiting to tell a story that wasn't hers. She stared at it and the old warning rose again. When the devil can't tempt you to take, he'll try to make you look like you did. She looked up at the ceiling camera and smiled without humor. Floors heard how people treated people. Cameras watched how people planned. She didn't touch the drive. She didn't make a scene. She wheeled the cart to the janitor closet, locked the door, and stood there a moment in that clean, lemon-bright silence. In the mirror, her face looked like it had grown older by an hour. She breathed, slow and even, and chose the only thing that ever kept her in one piece. Move honest, move quiet, and let the truth catch up. Out in the hall, the building hummed like nothing had happened. Somewhere upstairs, someone counted on fear to do their dirty work. Somewhere else, someone finally learned her name. And between those two places, a small piece of plastic sat where a lie hoped to grow roots. Chapter 4. Set up, sit down, stand back up. Morning came with sunshine and trouble. HR showed up at the service corridor with 2 managers and a guard, all stiff shoulders and printed paper. Their smiles had edges. Random compliance check, one said, the way folks say weather when they mean storm. They reached for Imani's cart before she could answer. The flash drive waited where the hand had planted it. Plastic, quiet, deadly. They held it up like a trophy no one wanted. The HR lead cleared her throat, reading policy like scripture. Unauthorized possession of storage media is grounds for immediate suspension pending review. The guard looked bored. The managers looked relieved, like the problem just introduced itself. Imani kept her voice level. I didn't put that there. The sentence hung in the air with no place to sit. They asked her to hand over her badge. She slid the lanyard off slow, not as a surrender, more like placing a fragile thing on a table. The guard gestured to the glass wall bench. Please wait. Folks passed by and went sudden blind, finding their phones very interesting. Shame traveled fast, just like gossip. Miss Bernice marched over from the supply closet with that auntie walk that made men mind their manners. She ain't that type, she said straight to HR. And I've been here long enough to know types. HR blinked but kept the script. Policy had no ears for testimony. Renee didn't waste time. She slid into Darius's office with a folder in one hand and her jaw set. She didn't plead. She presented timesheets, access logs, vendor data with duplicates that looked like mirror tricks. We have anomalies, she said, and we have a setup. Darius kept his eyes on the page, not her face. Feelings? Facts, she said. And we can get more. He tapped the desk once, a quiet gavel. Audit, now. Legal looped in. Risk on standby. No leaks. His voice stayed cool, but the room warmed up like engines turning. Back in the hallway, Imani sat still and let the building breathe around her. She watched the reflection of people in the glass and thought about water running muddy. Stir it. It stays dirty. Let it sit, it clears. She counted tiles to keep her heart from running. She prayed the short prayer. Lord, stand me up inside. Tyrone slid into the IT nook like a rumor. He had keys that opened software doors and a face that made people forget he did. He pulled camera indexes nobody ever checked, the side angles folks mounted and then ignored. One by one, slow and careful, he scanned timestamps. Then there it was, a clean shot from a frame near the elevator art, a manicured hand dipping into the cart pocket, a bright watch catching light like a signal flare, a quick slide of plastic. The face stayed off screen, but the suit sleeve told on itself. Tyrone sat back, blew out a breath, and whispered, "Got you." He messaged Renee. "Sidecam, sending clip." She replied with a single word that sounded like a whole plan. "Proceed." HR asked Imani to repeat her statement. She did. Plain, no flourishes. "I found the drive in my cart pocket. I didn't touch it." One manager raised a brow like disbelief was a hobby. The guard shifted his feet, eyes softer than his uniform. Not everybody in a uniform forgets they human. He brought her a cup of water without being asked. "Thank you," she said. Small mercies counted. Miss Bernice sat herself right beside Imani and pulled out a peppermint like she was in church and the sermon ran long. "Baby, trouble shows up dressed like a friend when it wants to sit close," she said, voice low. "But the Lord don't miss. Keep your back straight." Imani let the peppermint melt slow, sugar taking the edge off the iron in her mouth. Upstairs, Renee and Tyrone laid their pieces on Darius's table. Logs told a story of midnight edits from credentials that didn't belong to the night. Invoices told a story of names that duplicated like roaches. The video told a story without words, a hand, a watch, a plan. Darius didn't curse, he didn't grandstand. He pointed, asked 4 tight questions, then made 3 short calls. Legal wanted to pace. He told them to listen. Risk wanted to hedge. He told them to hold. Imani watched sunlight crawl across the lobby floor and thought how floors remembered footsteps. Some were heavy and selfish. Some were light and tired. Today her steps were paused, but her name didn't have to be. She wasn't a case. She was a person. That's the difference people forget until it's their turn on the bench. Renee came down with 2 security leads who looked like they'd just had a meeting with gravity. The HR lead started her policy voice again, but Renee raised a hand. Pause. She turned to Imani. Please come with us. No cuffs, no speech, just a door opening that had been closed all morning. Miss Bernice squeezed Imani's shoulder once, a blessing pressed through fabric. Head up, she said. They put Imani in a small conference room with a window that framed the city like a promise. On the table sat a notepad, a pen, and nothing else. She didn't write, she breathed. In another room, grown folks argued in carefully chosen words. In this room, a young woman waited like a tree stands, roots deep, leaves quiet. Darius watched the side-angle clip twice, then a third time. He recognized the watch. He knew the suit sleeve. He didn't say the name out loud, not yet. Power didn't make him blind. Routine had. That stung. He pressed his thumb against the edge of the table until the truth felt solid in his skin. Then he told security to stop playing hero with the wrong person and to keep their radios close. Tyrone shot Imani a quick text he knew she wouldn't see in time. Hold. We got light coming. He slid his phone back and whispered a thank you to the quiet servers that kept receipts better than people did. Evening leaned in. The building's noise thinned to the hum that lives in the walls. Somewhere a printer spit out pages no one would claim. Somewhere else, a conscience got heavy. Between those places, Imani stared out at Atlanta and reminded herself of old math. If they can plant a lie, God can plant a witness. The door clicked. Footsteps approached. The next minute would either bend her or lift her. She sat up a little taller and got ready to stand. Chapter 5. When power gets tested. They called the meeting like a fire drill nobody practiced for. Big boardroom, glass table wide enough to land a plane. People came in with faces that said they loved policy until it asked them to be brave. Imani sat near the end, not hiding, not posing, just present. Renee had a folder so neat it looked ironed. Tyrone carried a laptop like a shield. Gerald arrived last, smooth suit, cologne loud, smile rehearsed. Darius took the head chair and didn't waste anyone's oxygen. We're looking for facts, he said, not noise. He nodded to Renee. Renee started with paper. She laid out invoices like dominoes in a straight line, vendor names that almost matched, fees that grew taller after midnight, approval stamps that showed up out of nowhere. She didn't grandstand. She let the columns talk. In a room full of titles, numbers were the only ones that didn't lie. Gerald leaned back, made a little show of patience. Administrative lag, he said, voice silky. Routine cleanup, we scaled, things slip. He spread his hands like he was offering bread. Tyrone plugged in the screen. Server logs, he said. His tone stayed light, but the data didn't. Timestamps stacked exact, edits punching in at 1:13 a.m., 2:04 a.m., back to back, same user ID that belonged to someone who never worked nights. Looks like borrowed credentials, he added, eyes on the screen, not on men. Darius kept his face calm, but his finger tapped once under the table. Video, he said. The side-angle clip filled the monitor. No faces, just a clean shot of a hand dipping into a janitor's cart. The watch flashed like it wanted attention. The suit sleeve said luxury. The move was quick, practiced, ugly. A few people sucked their teeth under their breath. You didn't need captions to get the story. Gerald went lawyer smooth. Out of context, he chuckled without humor. We don't know what that is. Anybody can stage a clip. Then he looked at Imani like she was a problem he could invoice. With respect, this is wasting executive time. Imani spoke once, and only once. Her voice didn't try to be more than it was. I don't steal, she said. I didn't touch that drive. The math upstairs felt wrong, that's all I brought. No tears, no speech, just a line she could stand on. Renee hit speakerphone. A vendor answered from a noisy street, wind hitting the mic. Renee asks two simple questions about duplicate invoices and consulting adjustments. Silence grew on the line like a weed. The vendor cracked. He used the phrase everybody uses when truth finally crowds them. Look, it's complicated. Then it got simple. Kickbacks dressed as fees. A cousin's LLC, a friendly signature from up top. The temperature shifted. No one said karma out loud, but it sat down anyway. Folks looked everywhere but at Gerald. He went from smooth to sharp. This is a coordinated attempt to smear my department, he said. I will not. Darius raised a hand and the sentence died in the air. He stayed seated, but the room stood at attention. You planted evidence on an employee, he said, voice low enough to cut. You used credentials that weren't yours. You skimmed money that doesn't belong to you. Effective immediately, you're relieved of duty. He looked to security. Collect his badge. Legal will handle the rest. Risk, freeze associated accounts. IT, lock him out of every door he thinks he owns. Gerald tried a last card, the kind men play when they forget who they're talking to. You'll hear from my attorney. Darius didn't blink. He can take a number like everyone else. Security moved without drama. No dragging, no headlines, just the sound of a lanyard unclipping and a door opening that only swung one way. The hallway outside filled with that hush people make when a storm passes by their building and they realize the windows held. Darius turned back to the table. He didn't give a speech about ethics. He didn't need to. He looked at Imani, not past her. At her. You were wronged in my house, he said. I'm sorry. The words landed heavy because men like him rarely said them. He didn't try to buy the moment. He let it stand and be counted. Imani nodded once. Thank you, she said. That was all. Pride didn't need fireworks. Renee gathered the papers with surgeon hands. Tyrone shut the laptop like closing a case. People exhaled. You never know how tight a place has been until the air changes. News traveled fast, like it always does when truth finally gets a microphone. In the hall, Miss Bernice caught Imani's hands and squeezed, till Bones remembered they were bones. Didn't I tell you, she whispered. The Lord don't miss. Imani smiled with tired eyes. He took his time. Bernice grinned. He always does, but he don't show up late. Darius stepped into the corridor and the building adjusted itself the way cities do when a traffic light finally gets fixed. Folks didn't cheer. They straightened. Respect didn't shout. It corrected posture. He spoke to the department heads in a voice meant for grown people. "We clean the books and the culture," he said. "If you can't do both, leave your keys." Back in the small conference room, Imani sat for one last minute by the window. The city looked the same. Buses, horns, the sky trying to decide what kind of evening it wanted. But something had shifted in the inside weather. She thought of elders saying water remembers. Maybe buildings do too. Maybe they don't just hold people up. Maybe they hold people accountable. She stood and gathered herself, simple as tying a shoelace. Trouble had tried to name her. Truth had said her real name first. Outside the door, steps approached. Inside her chest, the drumbeat calmed. A mess had been made tidy. A seed had been planted. And a room that once cost too much to enter had just learned the price of honesty. Chapter 6. Bread, Bridge, and Better Days. The next morning, the building felt different, like somebody finally cracked a window and let the heavy air walk out. Folks said good morning without rushing past the word. Emails read cleaner. Even the copy machines behaved like they caught the Holy Ghost and decided to stop jamming. Darius called a town hall and showed up on time, which already said something. He stood without a podium, palms open, voice steady. He apologized to the whole house and to Imani by name. He didn't throw glitter on it. He owned it. Then he laid out the fix. Books cleaned, contracts rebid, and a new program for people who fell and stood back up. A scholarship and paid rotations for working students who needed a second door. He named it after his late mother and after Imani's father he never met. That part wasn't for press, that was for people. Later he met Imani in the small glass room where trouble had tried to sit her down. No entourage, just 2 chairs and sunlight. He offered her a choice. Quick cash that could calm a storm for a little while, or a full ride to finish school plus a paid spot in the finance team when classes allowed. She didn't let the silence get long. She took the second. "I don't want to rent a blessing," she said. "I want to own one." He nodded like somebody had finally translated a language he pretended not to speak. Renee handled the paperwork like a midwife, calm and exact. Tyrone cracked a grin and told Imani he expected her to correct his spreadsheets and his grammar. "Do both?" he said. "I'm trying to live right." Miss Bernice hugged Imani with both arms and a lifetime of auntie strength. "Don't get brand new on me," she said, laughing. "You still better wipe a counter if it looks at you wrong." Imani found a room 10 minutes from the tower, up 2 flights of creaky stairs that sang a little when you climbed them. The place had a window that caught late sun and a heater that argued with winter but never quit. She set the plastic badge on the dresser, not as a surrender but as a promise. She taped her class schedule to the wall and wrote out a budget that made room for breathing. It wasn't fancy. It was steady. At work, the small changes kept adding up. Managers stopped weaponizing "per my last email." People held doors like they were holding down a verse. New hires learned the real handbook. Speak up, show up, leave it better. The maintenance guy fixed a leak and somebody actually thanked him like he'd rescued a child. Water remembers, the elders say. That week, the floors started remembering better things. Darius watched all of it with a face that didn't brag. He wasn't cured of being himself. Power is a habit. But he listened more. He asked names. He paused before he dismissed. Grief had carved rooms in him that money couldn't fill. Respect started moving furniture into those rooms. On Friday, the team in the canteen celebrated with peach cobbler from somebody's aunt and chicken that made the room hum. Tyrone made a toast that turned into a joke and then into a prayer without changing tone. Renee rolled her eyes and smiled like a sister who's seen too much and hopes for more anyway. Imani sat beside Miss Bernice and learned the latest gossip about plants, people, and which side of the building had the best light for thinking. When the party plates were scraped clean and the room slid back into work, Imani walked out into a soft evening and headed toward the old underpass. The city kept doing what cities do: yelling, selling, shining, forgetting. The bridge kept its cool the way concrete does. She stood in her old corner and felt the past lean in without grabbing. She set down a paper bag with fresh bread and a couple of fruit cups, the good kind that don't taste like the can. Beside it, she left a small folded note. What isn't yours won't bless you. Work will. Be safe. She didn't say goodbye out loud. She didn't have to. Some places understand. She turned and walked toward the bus stop with her shoulders loose and her steps talking to tomorrow like they were friends again. Back at the tower, janitors pushed their carts like little boats, and offices looked less like stages and more like rooms. Someone played Old Soul on low in a back hallway. People moved to it without meaning to. The building itself seemed to nod along. When a place survives a storm and stands, it gets to choose the kind of house it wants to be. That choice is a daily thing. Darius ended his day at the window the way he always did, but the view felt less like a trophy and more like a responsibility. He thought about a lost wallet that came back with interest. He thought about a hidden photograph and a public apology. He thought about the kind of math you can't audit, how dignity multiplies when you refuse to sell it cheap. Imani rode the bus with her backpack in her lap and her head leaned back just enough to rest without sleeping. She scrolled through class notes, built a checklist, and smiled at the way her life finally lined up like columns that agreed. When the bus hissed at her stop, she stepped off and knew the road home by the sound. It sounded like peace trying to be brave. Old folks taught us that a parable travels light but carries a long shadow. This one did too. A girl turned down easy money and picked up honest work. A man in a high chair learned to sit like everybody else when truth walked in. A building learned to breathe, and somewhere under a bridge, a paper bag and a small note waited for a stranger who needed to hear that blessings don't come by stealing. They come when your character and your choices finally shake hands. That's the math no spreadsheet can hold. That's the bread that feeds more than one person. And that's how better days begin. Quiet as a mop on a clean floor, steady as a heart that knows its own name.